Very happy. So me and Helen were just going to briefly sort of introduce some research we've both individually been doing, and then we'll have a little chat and open it up to the audience. So I think Helen's going to start, if that's okay.
Thank you. Okay, I've come here today to talk about skills and skills within the creative and digital sector. I'm just sat here just seriously evaluating my own skills needs, to be quite honest with you, because this is well out of my comfort zone, but never mind. So I'm here today to talk to you about what the Skills and Growth Company have been doing to support the creative and digital sector within Cheshire East. The UK, nationally, the creative and digital sector has been growing for a good 10 years now. And it's widely recognised within Cheshire East that that sector is replicating the UK national growth. And it's becoming increasingly important for this area to support and encourage and help the creative and digital sector to grow. And it's crucial, in actual fact, to our economic success going forward. And what is emerging when the Skills and Growth Company have been talking to employers from the sector, what's been emerging from the employers is that they're starting to talk about they're growing, they need additional staff, they're trying to take on employees, but they're struggling to find individuals with the right skills, with the right skill sets. And not only that, but they're also of concern, they are also very concerned about retaining their staff, keeping their staff, and not losing them to other companies or losing them to the cities, etc. So we recognised there was a need here to do some work with the sector. So we started to work with Weave. Weave is an employer-led task force, and it's also, it's a task force. It's made up of employers from the creative and digital sector, but it's also made up from the local authority, from the training and education sector as well. So it's an environment where we can all sit together and we can talk about what the skills needs are and how we can address those. And the first thing we did quite recently, and this is really what I'm here to kind of highlight to you, is we commissioned a skills strategy and an action plan which identified and worked with those employers and started to identify what the skills needs and strengths and opportunities were for the sector. And I'm here really to just, I mean, the strategy is a high-level just summary really of the skills landscape and the characteristics for that sector. But it did highlight not only are there massive opportunities for this sector, and it's a very positive picture, but there are some issues, and I think it's important for me just today to just highlight and whiz through some of those skills challenges. And when the Skills and Growth Company talk about skills challenges, we talk very broadly sometimes, but some of these challenges are very unique to this sector that we desperately want to maintain growth and support going forward. And it's things like, I'm going to have to get up and look at my slides now. Sorry about that. So it's just the structure of the sector. Because the businesses are small, micro businesses, sometimes that's very difficult sometimes to support skills development and skills needs. And I'll just give you one example. It's very difficult for a very small business to release staff to 1 day a week to do training, and it's the cost of that, etc. The pace of the change, the technology change, the system, the education and training system, find it very difficult to adapt and change and keep up with the changes in the technology and the skills needs that are required. The skills as well, the public sector, sort of whizzing through this, but there's a lot of in-depth information behind all this in the strategy. But the other thing is that the skills sector, as they fund qualifications, they need to be formal qualifications. And what the employers are saying to us in Cheshire East is that the skills that they need are not always a nice boxed Sitting Guilds qualification. So there's a mismatch between what is actually funded through the public sector and what actually employers need. Probably no surprise to anyone in this audience that there's a significant lack of women taking up opportunities and jobs within the digital sector. The guidance that's been highlighted to us, that the guidance within sort of schools and education doesn't necessarily keep up with what the new employment opportunities are, what the trends are. So some of that is out of date and needs to be brought in line with what the current opportunities are. And again, what I've already mentioned, there's competition from other sectors and other, the cities, the Manchesters, the Londons, so they're attracting the skills, so people are gaining skills, but then going off for opportunities elsewhere. So what we've done, as I say, very recently, this is December work, we're just identifying and working with the Weave Group, with the employers, to put together an action plan to address some of those key challenges, so we can almost mitigate against those risks going forward. So some of those priorities are things like making sure that we develop the pipeline of talent, that there's a clear progression route from people going through schools. I notice there's people here that are working with individuals through schools, but it's about ensuring that they have the right careers choices, attracting women into the industry and beyond, and leaving school and making informed choices. It's not only about the pipeline, about young people coming through, it's also about people that you employ now and how do we effectively upskill and train those for the future opportunities and jobs. And we've got a number of actions around looking at how we can address that. And also, quite a challenge is looking at what the sector offers, what the FE sector, universities, schools offer, and how we can link that to what the employers need. So how can they be responsive? How can they be what we call a demand-led system? So a lot of work that we're currently underway with. It's all, as I say, it's just been finalised just at December, so it's work in progress, but that's where we're up to at the moment. Is that okay?
That's brilliant.
Okay.
Oh, swapsies again, brilliant. Thank you. So let me see if I can run this. So I'm Gemma May Latham. I use the May because if you search Gemma Latham, you get a beautiful blonde singer, which I am not. But I am a digital artist. Participatory artist is usually a term that I use, which basically means I don't sit in a studio and make art by myself. Everything I do involves people. My work is generally about exploring crossovers between textiles and code, and I very much mix analog and digital methods. And in that, there's something really valuable in using things that are accessible to everybody. So digital can be a very intimidating thing, as can textiles actually. Physical textile making can be intimidating to non-textile makers. So I try and use methods that will bring as many people to something as possible. And through doing that and working with things like museums and galleries and in public spaces and engaging with the wider public, I find that there's a lot of value in working on the ground with people, and that skills can be learned through those small moments in time. I've been working in the last year as part of the Shift programme as a freelance artist, running workshops, events, helping develop some of the programme. One specifically I've been running is called Pattern Craft, which is a series of events. You can have a go at that downstairs. Pattern Craft is an analogue to digital punch card reader. Harks back to one of the first things I ever did in Barnaby Festival in Macclesfield here, inspired by the Jacquard looms. But again, it's linking digital, physical making activities and making it accessible for a wide range of people. We've been running these activities in libraries, in community spaces, public events across Cheshire East. I am from Cheshire East originally, so it's something very important to me, and it's quite exciting as an artist to finally be able to work in the area that you grew up in, whereas normally as artists have to go wider afield. And one other programme we've been running is using Minecraft, so as well as digital tools, I use games to engage children, but you do find the parents get involved in that too. Something really, really valuable through the work that I do is the intergenerational aspect. And in terms of upskilling, which is something I'd love to dig into deeper with Helen, is the kind of the learning opportunities that sit outside of educational institutes. And these pictures here are from one event and show a great snapshot of basically everybody getting involved. Grandparents, parents, kids, families, all learning together. And by using accessible materials and methods, you won't, exclude anyone. And I think that's really, really important. I'm also a PhD candidate as part of a cohort of 12 PhDs. It's quite an unusual PhD programme across the Northwest with 12 people across 5 universities, all working with the industry, and we are challenged with responding to the government's industrial strategy that a few people have mentioned this afternoon. It's quite a dry document as an artist, I have to be honest. But we've been working to currently working on a report, analysing some of the challenges across the Northwest and how creativity can help drive growth. Some key findings in terms of skills within that document are that in the Northwest we have an ageing, skilled workforce. There's a massive ageing population. I'm sure we're all very aware of that. All those people are still working and want to keep working, and they should. So when we talk about upskilling people, we shouldn't just be talking about children. We need to keep everybody involved in those digital and creative sectors. Thinking about skills for the future, let's not just talk about the STEM agenda, which government is very big on. Totally agree, it's really important, and especially if you look at the makeup of industries across the Northwest with automation, pharmaceuticals, we obviously need all those skills, but creativity should be core to all of those skills. And yeah, creativity is key to growth. So I think there has been plenty of evidence. I did have like a whole pile of stats to read you, but I don't want to bore you. I think it's really valuable as a creative myself and as a room full of people I think do acknowledge creativity as being important to growth. I think it's something that needs to be recognised institutionally and on a broader scale. And from that report that we've been working on as a group, we have some key recommendations in terms of skills. And those are that a cross-sector approach is vital. So yes, creativity is important in the creative and digital sector. We need to teach people coding, we need to teach them program, but we need to teach across the whole of the sectors. Creativity is just as important as Dave talked about in terms of SEMAs this morning. It's across the sectors. We shouldn't be putting anything in pigeonholes. Also, yeah, the wider economy, opportunities for intergenerational learning will be key. So as I've just said, through my practice as an artist, I see that bringing in lots of people and sort of moving outside of educational institutions, I think will be really valuable, especially in terms of that ageing workforce that we have, and upskilling outside of educational institutions. So how are we doing for time? 5 minutes, brilliant. So that means we have a little bit of time to dig in some questions, which I think would be really valuable at this point. I was going to ask you, Helen, what do you think of the term pipeline? I've recently discovered I have a dislike for it. Yeah. And I think it's because it feels like we're going to put people in one end and they're just going to shoot out the other end. And there's no chance to veer off or change in between. I think, especially in relation to some of the discussions this morning about the future of work and how it's going to be totally different, especially the kids that are coming through at the moment. Just what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't like it either, to be honest. Although I use it, unfortunately, and it is in the strategy. And it is a description that's kind of recognised within the sector as sort of bringing people from, you know, a young age right through to like you say, an older generation. And making sure, I think the term, like you say, probably not very attractive to probably women either. I don't know why, but it sort of feels a bit drain-like, doesn't it? It's a pipeline. But it is, as I say, it's a term that's trying to describe the journey from a very young age all the way through, and making sure. And the thing that comes across in the strategy is it talks about young children being very, very keen at digital skills. So everybody's quite surprised that they're not taking up digital at an older age group, and they sort of get to about 13, 14, digital math, but then they don't make those significant choices when they're making very important choices of what to choose as they go through the education system. And there's a real lack of understanding of why. And this is just one aspect of the strategy, but we're talking about how can the sector make it more appealing. And perhaps it is language, and it is about using less of pipeline and more of something perhaps that attracts young people. But that is one of the things that that is a challenge for us that we're trying to address. But just on the other things that you were talking about, because there is a term that's coming through now. You've probably, I'm sure you have heard of it. But I completely agree with what you're saying about integrating the arts into the sort of other occupations, other science in the STEM sector. And there's a term now called STEAM that is rapidly going ahead. So it's about the arts being right in the middle of the STEM sector. So, and again in the strategy, it talks about integrating the arts within the whole sort of digital and creative sector and beyond that. And that is the sort of STEAM agenda, which is growing in momentum now. So STEAM is a tricky one for me. As an artist, I'm obviously meant to go, yes, we need the arts in STEAM, but having worked with some primary school teachers, I think it risks an approach where they go, let's stick some art in.
and rather than it being integrated, I think the arts in itself, the arts as a wider subject area obviously has an important place, but creativity should be a more fused approach. Just in my personal opinion, it can be a slightly unhelpful term, as much as I don't want the arts to be lost. I have a regular conversation with an engineering friend of mine who didn't understand why arts needs to be there. He argues with me that engineering is creative, which I totally agree with. So it's kind of, there's difficulties in those terminologies.
Yeah, there is, and just recently the Skills and Growth Company have commissioned a sector analysis into the construction sector, and what is coming out, it's not necessarily arts, but it's the biggest significant skills need is coming out is digital in someone like the construction sector, which is quite, you wouldn't necessarily expect that, but it's coming out more and more and more over the time I've worked at the Skills and Growth Company. This sector is absolutely critical, but it's not critical in isolation, it's critical to lots of other industries as well.
I think I've also seen evidence that people like Bentley in Cheshire East have also said that craft skills are really important to their HS2.